they cannot find the Amber Boys, but they know they are there. And they are trying all kinds of ways to get to the Amber Boys, and they will not be able to. And so this revolution is succeeding. My name is Augustine Ambe. I am here today on a very special show. This show is about the murder of school children, which took place in Kumba on Saturday, the 24th of October, 2020. There were a lot of children that were shot at. My understanding is that by today, 7 are declared dead. These children range from the ages of 12 to 14. A day after, the question is, who killed these kids at high noon on Saturday? Now, there have been a lot of speculations on who did this, but Mr. Eric Tato of National Telegraph has no question about who has a history of doing this kind of stuff.
Listen. Hospital for Bafut. Now we not be familiar for Bafut. Cameroun military don't cut person he hate. He take a head was he one female they bring my head for ransom. He cut head for Bafut. All Bafut people from Mambo to Agiati. Una know. They cut una brothers ahead, they hang them for stick. All man were there for Oku about the incident where happened for January 29, 2019, where our brother, when a nurse, Ngamsha Gilbert Saba, if he go for a duty post, he move his ID card, show military she tie bomb for his skin. He go denotate for Tadu. Who remember that incident? That Cameroun military that. But they come say no, they are the Amber Boys. But come say no, it is the military we saw. Dr. Samuel in Jimongu, where he been a dentist for Kumba, on Sunday, February 3rd, 2019, Cameroun military shoot it for Ediki. Open fire, kill this doctor for Ediki. Doctor when a Kumba person. Are Emilia Bessem where they only 38. He be heavily pregnant for Talangaye, for inside for Manu, for a month of subdivision. What happened? Military go move this for farm, which is 3 picking them. One of the picking them 3 years, 4 years, 7 years. They shoot all of them, kill and for that pregnant woman for Talangaye. I do not date and name and place. Any man when he doubt this like talk can't prove me otherwise. Go to all websites, research all these things have been carefully written. That Cameroun military job that. Baby matter, Mbu matter. That one at the surprise say put the right justice for Kumba. Listen, we got to do above that. Baby matter, they shoot baby matter, but the same time when they shoot the Kumba picking them 11:15 a.m. on which day 20th May 2019, where probably they say one Cameroun they shoot baby matter picking up down every 5 months. Of Etoko my 22 for Manu, for Upper Bayan, Etoko my 22. They will kill over 7 people there for the kids one try for Cocoa Farm. No man ever talk about them.
So Mr. Eric Tato just documented that the Cameroon military has a history of doing this kind of stuff. But I want to also separate the Cameroon military because there is a traditional Cameroon military and then there's the Brigade Intervention Rapide, the special military trained by the international community. And when I talk about the international community, I know that the Americans, the French, the Germans, and the Israelis have been involved. I don't know the other ones, but definitely the international community has been involved in training that particular branch of the security system in Cameroon, which is being used to prosecute what La République du Cameroun calls a war in the southern Cameroons, alias Ambazonia. I will come back to that because we need to talk a little more about the B and their role and the tactics they use. But I want to now move. Let's come close to let's focus on what happened in Kumba. And to do that, I do have Mr. Terence Bangawakai on the phone. Terence is not a stranger on this channel, and I'm sure it's not a stranger to most of you who have been following our channel. Terence, I want to welcome you to this show.
Thank you.
So I do understand that you have also been following the story in Kumba.
That's correct. Yes.
What have you learned, sir?
I've learned nothing new. If you replace Kumba for Garbu, you have the same circumstances. It's going to play out exactly the same way it played out in Garbu. The Minister of Communications for Cameroon Republic will come out with a communique. I think he's already done so, and talk about the Republican nature of the army and so on and so forth, and put the blame on Ambazonians who have been defending their lives against the onslaught from France, masquerading as La République du Cameroun.
Well, let me ask you a quick question, a very quick but not very simple question, and it's one that I'll ask you to speculate. Why do you think, and I'm going to just go back a few years back, why do you think, Terence, that a simple, peaceful protest by lawyers and teachers has brought us to where we are today with the kind of murders, some of which you mentioned, some of which Eric mentioned? Why do you think a simple, peaceful march by lawyers brought us to where we are today, where children are being murdered in classrooms?
Ambazonia has been the source of enormous wealth in the pockets of individuals in Paris, in London, in New York, and in other parts of the world. That source of income is being threatened because they have developed relationships with Paul Biya, who sits there on behalf of the French. And one of the things about investors is that they do not like uncertainty. Paul Biya provides them with certainty. He provides them with these draconian dictatorial policies that in their view secures their investment. If the grievances of the lawyers and the teachers were addressed like normal human beings should have addressed situations of disagreements, that stability, the prospect of that stability being altered, is what these profiteers were afraid of. Therefore, they gave Paul Biya the authority and the cover to pacify Ambazonia and to maintain the stability of the loot by mostly Western countries, Western companies, and Western institutions. So this is a resource war. This is a resource war based on the illegal annexation of a UN territory, a territory within which its citizens have now decided that it's time for them to have control of their own destiny. The exercise of the control of their destiny, as I've just noted, destabilizes decades of undisturbed flow of wealth into these areas that I've just mentioned. And that is why they refused to address the grievances of Ambazonians the way normal human beings would address grievances or disagreement.
Now, this war did not start It started definitely with La République bringing its troops as declared by Paul Biya. They brought their troops. They burned villages. Why is it at this level now where children are being murdered? It's not only children, but we are really talking about the situation in Kumba. Why do you think 4 years after the first protest, why in 2020 children are being murdered in the classroom? What is going on? Are children the people fighting La République du Cameroun? Do children even understand what's going on?
Well, there is something called the strategy of tension, which I think is what's in play here, where you create scenarios for crimes in order to justify a crackdown, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this is not what La République is trying to create a scenario, blame the Ambazonians, and then they are not expecting to crack down on the Ambazonians, but what they are expecting is protection and sympathy from their friends in the international community. What they're expecting is that the population that so far has expressed solidarity with the Ambazonian struggle turn against them, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is really unacceptable in what has happened is that the United States Embassy in Yaoundé is aware of this. The French Embassy in Yaoundé, they are the command and control center for these activities.
Mm-hmm.
The ambassador from Paris a few months ago was in Boya, met with the governors and the governor of that so-called Southwest regions, with the administrative authorities in that region. They are the primary responsible. They carry the primary responsibility for all of these crimes in the Southern Cameroons, in the former United Nations Trust territory of the Southern Cameroons under United Nations administration. This devil of a French ambassador who sits there and inspects guards of honor of these people who go and kill infants is responsible for what is happening in Ambazonia. It comes at the very highest level of the French government. Macron instructed Dia to pacify Anglophone Cameroon. The French parliament has instructed Dia to pacify Anglophone Cameroon. Dia has been in prison since citizens of his country kicked him out of Europe. The only time he went out of his prison was when Macron instructed him to release their opposition leader. He did not instruct him to stop killing our people. He did not instruct him to open sincere negotiations with the people of Ambazonia. So the French are directly responsible for every single infant that is being killed. Yesterday was Ngarbu, today is Kumba, tomorrow will be Modiko, a few months later will be Manfe, after that will be Bamenda. And when it happens, what happens? We'll get crocodile tears from the American embassy. We do not need their condolences. That devil of a French ambassador, you are proud of what your charges are doing in Ambazonia. It was your mission to assimilate these people, expressed.
You're saying that the reason why these children are being murdered is because of international and colonial pressure. Now,
the reason they are being murdered is because they are trying to justify. They are trying to justify something that cannot be justified.
No, I understand that part. I think
you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
They are being murdered because they want to turn the Ambazonian people against their quest for justice.
Right, and I think you're coming
They are being murdered because Cameroon is looking for international sympathy that they do not have.
Yes.
But what is what is jarring about all of this is that they will never have it. Those who come out, like the American embassy and this devil of the French ambassador, and offer this nonsense, they better just keep quiet. We don't need the people of Ambazonia do not need their condolences.
Yes.
They know what the problem is. They have the instruments to provide a solution without another child being killed in that place, on that continent.
Yes, and that
they have the resources. And then what they do is the American embassy, the current head of that mission in Cameroun, since she took over, Madame Fitzpatrick, has been echoing the words of that killing administration. He has never called them to order. We do not need their sympathy. We do not need their empathy anymore. We do not need their condolences anymore.
Okay. I really want to keep this interview very focused. I think you identified that these kids are being killed because of foreign interests that needs to be protected, and therefore France, who orders Paul Biya to release Kamto, is unable to order Paul Biya to stop the killing because he wants the killing to go on. Now, so I'll take that as one reason. The other reason is that, Terrence, I think, and this is where I was trying to have you add. I think the other reason is that La République du Cameroun and the Abiy, they have tried, because the children are not fighting. It is the freedom fighters who are adults who have been fighting them, and I think for 4 years they haven't been able to defeat them. So that is where what you were talking about, community, I can't remember how you expressed it. I think they're trying to provoke the community to rise against the Amber Boys by killing these children in order to say Amber Boys are killing their children. Do you agree with that?
Yes. That goes without saying, and I think I mentioned that. Maybe I wasn't articulate enough.
No, you did. I just wanted you to expand on that because I think that is really what it looks like on the ground. Because when they were committing this crime, they did not want you to be thinking of the French or anybody else. They did not want you to be thinking of the Ambazonian community to be thinking about the international community. They did not want you to be, or anybody to be thinking about that particular pressure. They wanted everybody, including the international community, to think that it is the Amber Boys doing it, and if they can accomplish that too, they will get two results from that. The first result is that they will get Ambazonians to rise against their own fighters, their own defenders. The second is that they are trying to get the international community to brand the freedom fighters or the freedom defenders of Ambazonia as terrorists. And I'm driving to that because the one time that the international community gets involved into Africa, ship equipment, ship personnel, train troops, and stand by and see them fight is when they say there's terrorism. And so La République is trying to provoke that so that they can get the freedom and the help to come and win Ambazonia. They're trying to draw in the international community. I wanted you to expand on that. And then
the only reason they believe that they can go and kill infants and then turn around and say it's Ambazonian terrorism is because France is on record as saying that they are protecting Biya against harder line members of the international community. It is because the current head of the U.S. mission in Yaoundé has been parroting their lines. They give comfort to Paul Biya to go and kill infants. That is the only reason they believe that by doing this, maybe the French, maybe the Americans will turn around and brand Ambazonians as terrorists. That is why they are doing it. If the Americans and the French and whoever tells this regime that these are a people who were not part of your territory when you got your independence on January 1, 1960, that there was an international institution called the United Nations that played a role in bringing this population into your already independent country to create two states of equal status. And now what we have today is not what the international community at that time foresaw, or what the people of Ambazonia at that time foresaw. Let us address the issue. They will not even dare to make an attempt to brand the Amazonian people as terrorists. They have been given a license by the international community, by the French, by the Americans. Thibault Nash, who sits there and says that we're working with our partners, where he knows the root causes of this conflict. What partner is Thibault Nash working with, if not the French and other white interests in Africa? What is fundamental to this issue is that you have an annexed territory, an annexation that was provided under the license of the international community, the UN, in conspiracy with the United Nations and the French, and the people have said enough is enough. If the international community, if these so-called muscular states in the international community do not tell these people who are carrying out these executions, because this is what they are, these are executions of the most defenseless human beings in that place, infants and children, then they will continue to do this. They have given license for these people to attempt to redefine the Amazonian struggle. That is the point I'm trying to make.
Yes, and you've made that point very eloquently, and because we've talked so much about the international community, I have a video here to play, and once I play that video, then we can come back and you can and we can expand a little more about it.
Sub-Saharan Africa has been fundamental to the global prosperity of the advanced countries. Okay? And Africa had a role to play. It has a role as a raw material producer. We will not allow Sub-Saharan Africa to escape that. Okay, we do everything to keep Sub-Saharan Africa where it is, also impoverished. It's absolutely vital for the prosperity of everyone else. So let's get clear about that. Okay, and this means all the economic structures, all the global institutions, and the economics we teach everyone is all designed to keep Africa exactly where it is. And whether it is Europe or US or now China, it's always the same. We need Africa to be impoverished because we need those raw materials and we need them dirt cheap. Okay, so that's the message. It doesn't mean to say that there's nothing Africans can do. Of course there is. Okay, but this is the opposition that they're fighting. This is what it's about. Because if Africa does do something different, I assure you living standards of all those in Europe and North America and Asia is going to fall. Okay? And that is a big price to pay. I assure you that the West is not going to allow that without a big fight. Okay, so this is what it's fundamentally about.
Okay, Terence, so what do you think after watching this video?
I think it jives into everything that I've said, not only today but in the past. I do remember a few months ago I invoked this theory of white supremacy regarding our issue and then expanded it to some of the challenges that the continent is facing. And what you see in parts of the continent where there's a lot of wealth, Congo, Kinshasa comes to mind, is that there is such mayhem which enables Western interests to just go in, get out their resources, the raw materials, and leave. They do not have to employ people, They do not have to pay taxes for retirement benefits.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's an absolute, it's worse than animals in the jungle. Because at least animals in the jungle have a hierarchy, right? There's a system that regulates them. There's an ecosystem. Here they go in, they get access to these resources, they employ people off the books, they buy the resources, they sell it to each other and play games and do not pay taxes either in Africa or in the West. You know what I'm saying? And all of these have become legitimized, if not even legalized. So you go into a place like this conflict. This conflict is as a result of international lawlessness. This is and in lawless society, you can go in and do as you please. Nobody holds you accountable. And this is exactly what we have here. And the basis of the solution to this crisis is not to continue to think that you can put a bow on lawlessness. It's like putting a bow on crab and putting it on a plate and happy to eat it. It's not going to work. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So what with the conflict, the bedrock of the conflict is lawlessness. The fact that it was against international law not to give us independence, the fact that even the agreement that we reached into was never respected, and the fact that those individuals who've risen up to ask for a respect of these laws are being killed. And instead of us going straight into this issue, right, you're giving license for Biya to try to create a scenario where we'll be called terrorists. And that is one of the first things that they do after Kumba. Before anybody had done any kind of investigation, they are branding the people terrorists.
Yes, and they already saying it was, and they were saying that it was the Amber Boys who did it. Of course,
Yes.
Eric Tato did come out with proof of the regime, the deal in Meme in particular, as being the one instructing his soldiers to go do this. And I will show that right now.
If you look the SGO from Meme, I've already named. If you look the SGO from Meme, a very useless man, a criminal, a thief, an armed robber, all the way they live on bribes. Listen, me, I National Telegraph, my company, my newspaper, I know all these people. I don't work with the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to SGOs. So that man will not see face, I want to see face. Now the wicked man this. And tonight, you don't sleep for the Kumba population. If you don't like, when I live, you know, Chamberlain and Don, I name that. Okay. Now in this, now the SGO this, now the man that we go keep picking them for school. Now look and find. When I see him, I bring the screenshot. All man will watch me. Hashtag justice for Kumba. All man. La Republic nothing go free for go without picking they go kill him. All man for Kumba. Even my notice screenshot I won't show you. Look somewhere police station the day. Gendarmerie looks away the day, then think and say, how Amber to get courage for 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock for any go shoot picking them. Think am. Cameroun go keep up in the SGO go plot. My show now wait to read the SGO right now. And I see them very well. Now screenshot this man. My show now. Some people don't use some screenshot from my social. Say no, I mean I screenshot this one. I mean that no screenshot in lie. And my show now with the message from I see him. I go for the screenshot. And I want to thank this was source where he sent with this screenshot from Chadway, the SDU. You get one of the commander the way they execute that thing. And I say after this, the workers man killing, not my business. But I hope soon I will see. Now in this, now look I'm very well. Now see the SDU they last seen today for 10 a.m. Now in this here. Now SDU number that. After this, I'll put this screenshot out. Now look I'm very well. Now in number that. The same number was shown now. Now in that. The SGO right there, that screenshot they show say, Commander, I'm sure you now understand why when I give instructions, it must be carried out that way. it's not clear to the population that it wasn't the Ambazonians. I specifically instructed that only that teacher should be shot. That was the easiest way to pin it on those guys. You must fix this. He said, I'm sorry, Mr. Prefect. That the translated version that. Listen very attentively now. STO that. Now, you can't be sorry. It must be fixed. Let's get the honor of the school, Madam for Bindia Judith. Now, STO, the talks of honor for school, now, Madam for Bindia Judith. Get her arrested and just keep her under custody so that the population will know that we're investigating the issue. Also activate the boys to hit the other targets by Wednesday. So they plan something on Wednesday when they come. And I think get more attacks for Kumba if this thing will be leaked. On Wednesday, now it's the plan. Do two and arrange for them to be caught on the spot so that they can confess on camera as Amber. We'll handle the rest. Understood, sir. That's in our SDO talk. Now the screenshot this. Right here, now the screenshot this.
Okay, Terrence. So we see the evidence. But I want to go back to the tape that we just watched. You heard the individuals say that they'll keep Africans impoverished, producing raw materials, and that the development of Africa is going to lower the standards of living in the Western world, including China. Meaning that I love a matter which is not laughable because it's funny in the 20th century. So what he is saying is that slavery built the West, colonization continued to build the West, and that for right now, the West, in order to maintain all these things that slavery and colonialism built, Africans who built all of that need to remain the... I really lack a word to describe it because it is. When I watched that video, I was devastated that human beings can actually sit down in institutions and craft a policy after more than 5 centuries of slavery, saying that we are going to keep Africans impoverished and producers of raw material, and any change of that situation is going to lower the standard of living in the Western world, and they will not tolerate it. How did you feel when you listened to that? Because
not the same way you did.
Yeah,
not the same way you did, and I'm sure any right-thinking black person, not only Africans, will feel the same way. Anything, I mean, as a matter of fact, any conscientious individual will feel the same way, will feel the same level of indignation that you and I felt. But one of the things that I thought about when I watched that was that this conflict is a microcosm of the larger things that man is talking about.
yes,
Because when you see what has happened to Ambazonia, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is not a stretch. We are poorer today than we were. You know, as a matter of fact, on the eve of our independence, in reports, the United Kingdom said that this territory was very profitable, quote unquote, profitable to the crown.
yes,
You know what I'm saying?
yes,
So we're more impoverished today than we were. We no longer have Yoke that gave us electricity, right?
yes,
We no longer have the Moliwe umbrella company. We no longer have WADA. We no longer have Santa Coffee. There are so many things that we have been actively impoverished.
mm-hmm. And that's just in industry. Our roads are worse.
Yes.
Our schools are worse.
Yes.
Our legal situation is worse, and you can just name them. So they've taken us back more than 100 years.
So who is conducting this policy on the ground, and on whose behalf is this policy of impoverishment being conducted?
Well,
That's why I want to look at this, right?
mm-hmm.
This policy of impoverishment of our territory is being carried out by the French. They've gotten a Negro, a blackface. First was Ayijo, now it's Paul Biya. Maybe tomorrow it will be Kamto, right? Who knows? To continue this policy, not only of impoverishing Ambazonia in the most dehumanizing way, but also of impoverishing that whatever is there in La République du Cameroun, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes, absolutely.
So and that is why Paul Biya is comforted, because he knows he's playing directly into what that white guy described, that gentleman described. Anybody who facilitates the impoverishment of Africa is good in the books of the West. And that's why Paul Biya can be there for 37 years and nobody bothers him.
Yeah.
That's why the only time they started going after Mugabe was when he turned out, when he upset the apple cart. When Mugabe was playing by their rules, he was being invited to dinner to the Queen. The moment he said that, I'm going to take this land back and give it to my people, what did they say? We're going to make your economy scream. They destroyed the economy. Anyone who doesn't subscribe to that policy of impoverishing sub-Saharan Africa, as that guy said in his piece, is a target. How does that take place on the ground? It takes place through this creation of lawlessness, of countries which are basically lawless entities, like DRC Congo, like with the situation now between Ambazonia and La République du Cameroun. This is a lawless construct. That's why nothing works. And it sits well in an area where people want to come in and do as they please and are not accountable to anybody.
Yes.
Once you're not accountable to anybody, we cannot sit there and construct our industries. We cannot sit there and construct and build a manufacturing base. As a matter of fact, those who have the ability to do that are actively negated. They're chased out. And all of this goes to fulfill what that guy describes in that video. We as black people, we have an existential battle to fight.
Yes, absolutely.
And that battle has been described there by that gentleman in that his presentation.
Yes.
He called it an ideology. That this is an ideology of continuous impoverishment of sub-Saharan Africa. He said that it was taught in their economic, it has been infused in all of the institutions of the world,
yes,
in all of the universities of the world, and in what they teach you and I in these colleges that we've gone to overseas, for us to accept the fact that we are inferior and we're going to be impoverished for all times. Right?
Yes.
They bring Ambazonia as a case study because this is the perfect petri dish, so to speak, where you can see how lawlessness, how the creation of a lawless construct allows for this type of thing to happen. And this gives Paul Biya, the agent of France, who was groomed from a very early age for French agency in that part of the world, to go and try to attempt to change a narrative that everybody knows. I can assure you that if tomorrow the United Nations Security Council sits and says that former UN trust territories must accede to independence as was defined in the Charter, including as the Southern Cameroons, Paul Biya will have no leg, or the French will have no leg, to try to create an alternative narrative of terrorism that they did yesterday in Kumba.
Yes.
And this is just the beginning. We've seen it in Gabon, we've seen it in Pinning as the National Telegraph as outlined, and it's going to continue.
Yes.
It's going to happen tomorrow somewhere else, and you have the devil of the French ambassador who come out with his way of expressing revulsion. No, you're not expressing any revulsion. You are the cook in the kitchen. You are the one stewing this brew of death that is falling on our people. You were in the southwest regions a few months ago meeting with the governor and his administration. What were you planning? Spare us your revulsion.
Yes.
Spare us your revulsion.
Now let me say this. I think in terms of implementing that policy which the gentleman on the video talked about, and I want to spell this out because I think that our people, Africans, should be aware of this, because one of the things that the guy also said on that video is that Africans have a right to fight back, but they should know that what he just spelled out is what they will face, is their opposition. But I just want to go back and talk about it. You see, so today, in this day and age, obviously the West is not going to bring their troops and start shooting at everybody unless things really get bad. So what they do is they use agents like Paul Biya, plant them there, and people like Bagbo needs to be kicked out so that they don't get a different outcome than they want in Ivory Coast, and especially with the cocoa there. And that's why you see where there are resources, the survival of the Africa is more precarious. Another thing that they do is that when they look for excuses to actually bring some of these troops and train like bees trained, and the catchword there is terrorism. You know, I was listening to a lot of analysis after this event, and some of them were saying that, and this was by citizens of La République, they are some of their analysts. They were saying that Paul Biya is trying to get the international community to brand the Amber Boys as terrorism, but the international community will not do that because they understand our story very well. So, Terence, the question I want to ask you is, and this is a very important question, and it's very conflicting with what the gentleman on that video talked about. Since the murder of George Floyd, I've been going around and I see Black Lives Matter all over the place. So there is a change, at least, and I'm not saying that there's a shift of paradigm or anything, but I'm just saying there's a revulsion in the West, at least with the Western population, and maybe the population of the world, because the whole world protested against the murder of that individual. How does this affect the treatment of Africans? Because when you talk of Black lives, it does include African lives, or does it?
Okay. Then before I answer that question, I want to address what you said. Some of these Cameroonian commentators are saying.
Yes.
That the reason that members of the international community are not tagging us or tagging the Amazonian people as terrorists is because they understand our story very well.
Mm-hmm.
I believe they understand our story very well. And that's what makes me very, very upset with what's happening. They understand very well that we're not part of La République du Cameroun. They understand very well that La République du Cameroun, independent on January 1, 1960, does not commemorate that day as their independence. They know the reasons why. They understand very well that the goal was to, as Pierre Mesmer said, annex this territory, and that we had no chance because a conspiracy had been created against us. Paul Biya himself, groomed and put in there by the French, said it 2 years ago in Paris, when Macron gave him permission to leave the place, that the project was to assimilate our people, and they failed. They understand all of this very well. But why do they continue to give Paul Biya the license to attempt to change the narrative? That is the problem. Why, with this understanding, why do they not? I mean, I shouldn't even call him Paul Biya. He's the little Negro there being played by the French. Why do they continue to give the French the wiggle room to allow their agents out there to attempt to change the narrative, to change it to us, instead of being freedom fighters, as is recognized under international law, to terrorists? Why?
Well,
that
because
is the question.
No, I can answer that. I think Paul Biya is there to manage the situation, and that is part of his management tool. So his management tool.
Correct.
So part of his management tool is to recruit Africans and train them to kill other Africans. And this is where I really look at the Cameroon army and the DO and the governor and even Paul Biya himself, and I feel so sorry for them, because it's.
I don't think it's time to feel sorry for anybody. I don't think we should have pity for any of these people.
No, just hear me out.
I understand the meaning. I understand the meaning behind that expression of "I feel sorry for them." But what I really want to address about this thing that these people are saying, that they cannot brand us as terrorists They cannot brand it as the Ambazonian struggle as terrorism because they understand it very well, right? That is what you just said. These people are saying.
Yeah,
so the French understand it very well. The Americans understand it very well. The Germans, the British, they understand it very well. But they are still allowing. When they come and say, oh, armed groups. We saw the script in Gabu. It was, the first said it was Amba boys who did it. The story changed. At the final analysis, they came and admitted that it was carried out by us with vigilantes that they had recruited. We saw the same scenario in Womb, where they went and got vigilantes and tried and used against the local inhabitants in that area. The entire story of Kumba has not been written, but I'm telling you, it's probably going to be the same thing.
No, it will obviously it would be the same thing.
You know. So what we are asking, what we are requesting, the next logical step is to take that license away from the French. And the way you take that license away from the French is, as a lot of people have now been saying over the past few months, get an international fact-finding mission down there, right? Get it down there, and so that we establish what these people claim they understand very well.
Well, let me ask you a quick question. Do you believe wholeheartedly what the gentleman said on the tape about the interest of the West to keep Africa underdeveloped and impoverished?
Absolutely.
And then, so if you do, then let me just say this: if you do, then you shouldn't even be asking that the French are just playing their role, because once the French is protecting that resource base for the entire West, and the guy said that in fact, when it comes to Africa as being the source of raw material for the progress and the increase of standards of living for the West, the guy did mention not only the West, he mentioned the Chinese. So this is something which it is vital. So listen, they will be very quick to send a fact-finding mission to Myanmar, because Myanmar does not contribute anything to the rest of the world. Myanmar, so yeah, give them their justice. But in Africa, this guy was very categorical. In Africa, the freedom of black people, let me just finish this, please. The freedom of Africans means the lowering of standards of living in the West, and they are not going to tolerate it. And with that, I want to move to the next thing. And unless you have something to add here, because I want to move to the next important question for Africans, including Ambazonians in this case.
Yeah, in that piece, you specified sub-Saharan Africa.
Yes,
right?
sub-Saharan Africa, yes.
And when sub-Saharan Africa, made up of mostly black people, Negroid people, as they said. But what I want to also mention is we should look at what happened in Haiti after they gained their independence, and how much they had to pay to the French. It wasn't only the French that enforced it. The French would not have enforced it without the solidarity of the Americans. To impoverish Haiti for centuries. And look at Haiti today, look at the legacy that has left us, right?
Yes.
So I just wanted to bring that up. And you talk about that, I know these things, and why am I asking somebody why we're asking for an international fact-finding mission, right?
Yes.
I clearly understand that this is an international conspiracy, and I think that video that you've just played completely puts that out there for everybody to see, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is an international conspiracy. It is an institutionalized international conspiracy, and I've always said, right,
mm-hmm.
and this is the part of that cell in the human body. There's that one cell in the human body, the human psyche, right?
Mm-hmm.
That twinkles for hope. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
That twinkles, that they are individuals. We've seen what has happened. I'll go back to your George Floyd question. We've seen what has happened post George Floyd. We've seen the solidarity that it engendered around the world. You begin. You know what I'm saying? You're beginning to see some of the institutions respond to it. You know what I'm saying? So that is why we're still making a call for this.
Okay.
We're making a call that maybe these institutions can redeem themselves in one little case. and save the lives of these infants that are being killed. It was Ngabu yesterday, it was Pining yesterday, it was Bole Bakundu yesterday, it is Kumba today. And there's something which is really scary to think about. Kumba is a big town. This was a traumatic operation, if you want to put it that way. I can bet you, how many people were killed in Kumba? How many lives were lost? 7. Do you think in some remote part of Ambazonia, every single day, they are not killing at least 7 people?
No, they are. There's no doubt about that.
So this is what we are talking about. And this is why when I read a tweet from this French ambassador who walks around as if he owns La République du Cameroun.
Well, he owns it. He owns it.
And when I read that milk toast thing from the U.S. Embassy that has spent the last several months since the former ambassador retired, using the talking points of a regime that has been in power since 1960.
Terence, what I do understand you, there's a point you just added. I want to emphasize on it, and what you just added is that after the murder of George Floyd, the world showed that, including the Western world, that they do think differently from their governments and their businesses, because these are the two institutions that are responsible for committing these crimes on Africa. Because you have to understand how the system works. The businesses go first and look for business to take care of their shareholders, which is part of the whole Western society, citizens and institutions. But really, the leading institutions that go around the world doing these things are businesses and governments. So the hopeful thing that I hear you saying is that the population is a redeeming factor who, if they are educated enough, can actually change their government. And I do agree with that, because Western businesses and Western governments survive because of the support they get from their citizens. And so if their citizens are well educated about what they are doing to humanity outside of the West, then maybe there's a redeeming factor. And there's a good example for that. South Africa had to get a veto of President Ronald Reagan's against apartheid in order to be free, isn't it?
Correct.
So, but there is a mountain. There is a mountain which that video did put, and I think this mountain now, and I think that in your comments also bring that in to Ambazonia, because the guy said, so here is that is what we are for. What you gain is what we will lose as the West, and we are not ready to lose that. So you have the right to gain what you want, but know that we will be fighting you all the way. So how is Africa now going to fight this? How is Ambazonia going to fight the French and Paul Biya? Because I can tell you, by the way, but before, just hold a second, please, before you answer that question. I just wanted, since you talked about this fact-finding mission, what's the history of UN sending fact-finding missions to sub-Saharan Africa? Do you have that information?
I don't have that information. I don't know. I know in the case of Sudan, I don't think they actually sent a fact-finding mission. I know they did. The United Nations Security Council did appoint.
Okay.
Was it a rapporteur or a special envoy for the conflict? So that's something I'll have to look into. The reason that we're calling for a fact-finding mission is because of what has happened recently in places like Kosovo and Myanmar. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Which one of the things that happens once it's instituted is that things like Kumba and Gabu will hopefully not happen again. You know what I'm saying? It stops the loss of life. It needs loss of life. So that's the first step. I think I lost your second. What was your second question, though?
Well, the second question is that
what are we gonna do?
Yeah, the second question is that the guy said, look, we just stated that because of Africa providing our raw materials, we cannot allow them to become any wealthier. He said we want them to remain impoverished and producing our raw materials. And we will not allow them to develop. We will not allow them to industrialize. Correct. But they have the right. Yeah. But they have the right to do what they want. But they should know what the opposition is. So,
let me answer your question.
Yes.
The answer is no different than what slaves did. The answer is no different than what black African slaves did. Okay? Rebellion. Rebel, rebel, rebel. Rebel, rebel, rebel. We're gonna rebel until the cost of them coming in there to get those resources exceeds the profit that they make. There's no other. Let's not be philosophical about it. It's about rebellion, and that is what has happened in Ambazonia. We've been impoverished systematically for so long that it reached a state that they were trying to impoverish our minds by corrupting our educational system. They were trying to impoverish our values by destroying our legal system. They've already destroyed our traditional systems. The House of Chiefs no longer exists, and what you have now are auxiliaries to a colonial system being managed out of the Cellule Africaine at the Élysée Palace in Paris.
Okay,
you know what I'm saying?
All right, so rebellion.
So the answer to your question is rebellion, and don't ask me to give you details about rebellion.
No, I'm not going to ask you for details. I'm not going to ask you for details, but here's what I'm going to ask you. So Ambazonia rebelled, and then La République came into Ambazonia, especially in the impoverished state, and is able to throw in pennies and recruit people. So we have people who have been recruited, they're called blacklegs, and then you have poor people like the Sakos who have had opportunities to get into power, and then they are siphoning the money for themselves. So there are many obstacles. So rebellion is one. What do you do about the infighting and those who play agents to the enemy, and even for personal reasons sabotage the struggle? How do you overcome that?
That is the nature of any rebellion. That is the nature of, specifically of a decolonization struggle. You're gonna have fifth colonists. You're gonna have agents that the oppressor uses or the colonizer uses. You're gonna have infighting. That is if a decolonization struggle is an organism, there are specific characteristics to that organism, which includes everything that you've described. The agents, the spoilers, the saboteurs, and all of these people. We cannot have a decolonization struggle without these people. They were present in the American War of Independence. They were present in any other decolonization struggle. That is just the nature of the beast. That does not mean that we should not rebel and not continue this rebellion until we get exactly what we want. In this case, I'm talking about the Ambazonian struggle now.
Yes.
So I'm not worried. I've read anybody who has read the work of Frantz Fanon, right? Who did a lot of he was a psychiatrist, an MD, and he wrote for me he's the definitive what's the word I'm looking for? Authority.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So when you read it, everything that we see in our struggle, he has already articulated that. So I'm not one of those that gets bothered, by seeing people popping up and trying to be strong men and using violent language against each other and so on within that's the nature of this organism that we're dealing with. And let us understand that, right? Let us understand that. But ultimately, it is this rebellion. It took slaves 400 years of rebellion. There were slave rebellions everywhere, from Brazil to Canada. It did not happen. It did not happen after the first year, not after the 10th year, not after the 100th year, and even as we speak today, there's still cause of rebellion in these United States of America where you and I reside, based on the color of your skin and based on the fact that you're a black person. That's what the whole Black Lives Matter is all about. And when you look, the interesting thing about the Black Lives Matter movement is that a lot of the advocates for Black Lives Matter are also white people, especially the younger generation.
Yes. And
therein lies the hope against the project that guy described, against the impoverishment of the African continent, of sub-Saharan Africa. And therein lies the hope against what you've seen in Ambazonia. Because some of what the Cameroonians are now doing, the young Cameroonese, they are rising up against the injustice that their so-called country is carrying out in Ambazonia. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
But none of this will happen without active rebellion. And yes, the rebellion itself comes with its functions, right?
Yes.
But rebellion, it must continue, you know. And what we do here, what I do here, is part of that rebellion, right? It's part of that rebellion against what has been established from you know, in the land in which I was born, in a land in which I call my ancestral home.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Terence, so with this, let's conclude by coming back to Ambazonia, because most of what you said applies, but that's global. So when we come down to Ambazonia, we are looking at infighting. We are looking, obviously, the rebellion, which started in 2016, started with the lawyers, the teachers joining, the rest of the community joining. La Republique has tried to defeat the Amber Boys, but or our freedom fighters. They haven't been able to. They're trying now to stir the population. Obviously, the population is wiser than that, because there's nobody in Ambazonia that has not felt the pinch of the colonization. But there are tougher. You know, you just mentioned about it took 400 years plus for the slaves to free themselves. I don't think we have 400 years to do this. So I want you to also, you've mentioned the difficulties. I want you to also mention some of what really needs to be happening. I think we just mentioned the work of. I have always believed that if you are an African, use your talent, use what you've learned, use what has made your life better, use your expertise to bring it back to the service of your people. And I think an example of that is Eric Tato, as an investigative journalist, and his organization, National Telegraph. They have been very, very instrumental in weakening some of the people who have been, what I would just call the weak link. He has been very instrumental in weakening some of the weak links within our community. If you weaken a weak link, then you know you're making the links stronger, and that gives us our strength. The next thing is also better organization, because you really cannot accomplish anything being disorganized or being organized in the wrong way. So bring it home and conclude with Ambazonia, please. What would you tell Ambazonian people in the face of all these traumatized events and actions, that every day we wake up and the cry remains the same and the response from the international community remains the same?
To the Ambazonian people back home, the appeal is solidarity. The appeal is solidarity. You will not go anywhere without solidarity amongst you as a people, including those who I call freedom fighters. There has to be a national chain of solidarity among freedom fighters. That's my appeal to the people back home. To those of us in out of the country, I want to talk specifically to those of us in the United States who are American citizens. We need to become, my appeal to them is to become what they call in this business constituent advocates, right? Mm-hmm. Constituent advocate is that person who goes and gets their neighbor and goes to your church and goes to their work and tell who they can meet that I have an important mission for our congressman, for our senator. Can you sign my petition and let them know what is happening from the land that you come from? Right?
Mm-hmm.
We need to advocate that our country of residence, our country of citizenship, change their policy when infants are being killed. We need to galvanize our neighbors, our friends, our co-workers, our extended families who are American citizens, and walk through this system like the South African did, and have legislative
outcomes, yes.
Yes, that will go a long way to have this country look at what is happening and say it is incorrect. I want this country, the United States of America, my country, to be the first country in the West to take that license away from the French and from Paul Biya, so that they do not even dare to go kill another child in an attempt to call freedom fighters terrorists. That is our appeal. If you're an American citizen, you have a congressman, you have 2 senators. Make use of that.
I want to thank you for helping clarify the issues involved in our situation, both as Africans and also Ambazonians. I want to say that what Terence just talked about, advocacy and getting legislative action, it's very, very important, because even if we fight effectively, we still need the rest of the world to sit down and there's a point of pass judgment. We live in a world today that is so interconnected that until other people join us in our action, we will not get outcomes that we want. So that is why, while we fight on the ground and make it unexploitable and ungovernable, we also have to work with other institutions that need to lend us their support so we can get our freedom. On the international scene, here's my appeal on the international scene. You and I really did not talk about that extensively. It is easy for the West to now I'm going to repeat myself on this, but I want to repeat because there's another point I want to make. It is easy for the West to use terrorism to overnight fly weapons to terrorists who are terrorizing their citizens, because there cannot be a terrorist without a victim, okay? And if you think, and I'm going to use Boko Haram here, if you think Boko Haram were harassing the girls, we all know what girls I'm talking about. If the Nigerian government, for example, is harassing those same girls, given the same situation, it is also terrorism. And so there should be no reason why La République is aided there's no reason why it is so easy for the West to use terrorism and fly weapons and training to a terrorist government when the victim remains the same victim. Okay? Whether the people of Southern Cameroon are being terrorized by Boko Haram or by the Republic of Cameroon, they are all being terrorized. And the action is the same. So the West, and I'm saying this because, Terence, if you want to talk about, did you listen to one long explanation by a UN representative who was giving us the reasons why the UN cannot intervene in a conflict in another country? You remember that?
I do not remember that, but I don't think it's anything.
No, it is important because this guy said, we cannot intervene in a country until the country allows us, until the government does this, until the government does. They made it impossible for a country to intervene, for the UN to intervene in a country that is murdering its own people. That is wrong. But the West is...
This is what we need. We need to make a distinction, right?
Yes.
We need to make a distinction between what you're trying to say.
Yes.
It did not take very long for the UN to intervene in Côte d'Ivoire. As a matter of fact, as that conflict started, France was at the United Nations Security Council.
Yes.
And a resolution was passed.
Yes. Very quickly.
Okay? It did not take very long. what, again, it goes back to what that guy said on that video. When you have actors on the ground who are fulfilling that vision of impoverishment,
yes,
like Paul Biya does,
yes,
then they come with their disquisitions about why we should not intervene, right?
Yeah, thanks for helping me with that.
But, yes, but when it's something that goes against that their ideology of impoverishment of sub-Saharan Africa,
yes,
oh, they're quick to get in.
yes.
So whatever that guy is saying is bullshit. Excuse my French, right? So we understand that. I think the Ambazonian people clearly understand that, and I think we've established the fact that we're gonna live in a world of existential rebellion as Black people. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And you can engage in that rebellion by being a constituent advocate, as I've just explained, or you can engage in that rebellion by being a fighter in the bushes.
Yes.
But rebellion, it must be, we must always rebel against injustice.
Yes, and the rebellion finish your statement, please.
No, that's it.
And the rebellion that Terence is talking about is the rebellion that the people of Ambazonia initiated from 2016. It's been 4 years, and La République du Cameroun has not been able to defeat the Ambazonian rebellion, and right now they're acting desperate. If you see, they have all these bees that were trained by the international community, given the most advanced equipment, walking under the sun in Kumba, all geared up, and all to go and shoot little kids sitting in a classroom. That is frustration, and that frustration comes because they cannot find the Amber Boys, but they know they are there, and they are trying all kinds of ways to get to the Amber Boys or the freedom fighters, and they will not be able to. And so this revolution is succeeding. One of the things for a revolution to succeed is to persevere, is to be able to ride the waves and ride the dips. Today in Kumba, it's a dip. It was a dip in Gabo. It was a dip in Pinyin. Go watch what National Telegraph just listed. He took a lot of time to list the events and the dates. But today, La République is the one acting desperate. We are losing family members, but we have always lost family members. We have lost them to poverty. We've lost them to sickness because there are no hospitals. We've lost them in car accidents on bad roads because they will not build our roads. They destroyed our roads. And so let's persevere. We'll lose a few more, but we will free ourselves, because that is the route to freedom. And thank you for watching.